Somebody mentioned here earlier about members of the Navajo Nation in the U.S. being detained, questioned by ICE. And I'm going to be straight up, perfectly honest with you. I have no idea how citizenship works in the U.S. for American indigenous peoples. I was just under the assumption, and yes, assumptions make an ass of me and you and all that. I was under the assumption that they were just considered American citizens, but it's apparently not that easy. There's other things at play. Anyhow, I was reading an article on CNN about these Navajo folks who have been detained by ICE, and the Navajo. The elders' response, the council's response to it, and what they said was, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they got swept up. They got swept up by officials. So they're encouraging their people to always have their paperwork with them, to have their certificates with them, in order to prove their identity, and in order to show ICE agents who they are and who represents them and what nation they belong to. In that article, it was a good article, it was on CNN, it was a good article. In that article, though, they were speaking to a fellow by the name of James Jackson, who is what they call an honored activist within the Navajo community, and Mr. Jackson. He said this: although he worries here's what the article says. Although he worries for his community, Jackson says he also feels anger on behalf of immigrants from other countries who came to the U.S. to escape violence and economic hardship for the sole sake of their family's survival. No one is illegal on stolen land, Jackson said. It really goes back to the indigenous way of life, that everything is made for the people. People have to understand that this is not the way to live or to be honorable and neighborly with each other. I find that statement incredibly beautiful. I do. I find it incredibly beautiful. I think it's interesting that he points out the hypocrisy of, wait a second, y'all didn't come here legally, right? How dare you say that these people are illegal on land that you stole from us? What gumption do you have that you can do that? But moving beyond that, he talks about how the land is viewed, that it is here for the people. Now, here in Nova Scotia, in Halifax, this is Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And I remember, and I think I've probably mentioned this to you before, but I remember being at Synod one year, and we had a gentleman speak to us from the Mi'kmaq community, from the Mi'kmaq people who told us about their attitude, and their attitude about land and about people. And the first thing he said was, the people is the people. It's your people, I'm people. The land is here for us. That there was no sense of ownership because the land, it was just seen that the land would provide. I don't need to have a sense of ownership because the land will provide. He talked about the Mi'kmaq attitude towards the colonists, English and French, who mainly here, the English and French who arrived in the late 1600s, the 1700s, that these people who came, they were now our responsibility, he said. We saw it as our responsibility to take care of them. As the stewards of this land, we saw it as our responsibility to take care of all the people who were coming over here uninvited and getting off those boats and chopping down our trees not chopping down our tree, getting off those boats, chopping down the trees, killing the game, building communities up for themselves. We still saw it as our responsibility to take care of them. We saw it that the land would provide for us all. Hospitality was achievable because we did because they did not fear scarcity. They felt like this place could sustain the people. Whoever the people happened to be, they felt that this place could sustain the people. And therefore, they were free to be hospitable. They were free to provide for these newcomers. They were free to provide for these guests. They were free to provide for these uninvited people who were setting up camp right next door. They weren't afraid. They weren't afraid of scarcity. They weren't afraid of scarcity. They had what in church parlance would be, they had an abundance mentality. God will provide. The land will provide. God will take care of all of our needs. The land will provide for all of our needs. I think as I listen to James Jackson's words here, as I read those words and as I thought about my own experiences with the Indigenous people here in the Maritimes, how I've been blessed in the very, well, how would I say it this way? I would love to have more experiences with the Indigenous of Nova Scotia, with the Mi'kmaq. But in the experiences that I've had, with what I've read, with what I've saw, with what I've heard, to be hospitable requires us to trust that there will be enough. The Indigenous trust that the land has enough to provide for all. But we Christians, where did our trust go? Where did our trust that God would provide go? That we have to become miserly with the resources that are so abundant all around us? Where did our trust go? That I can't give to you because I may not have enough for myself. Where did our trust go? That I can't be hospitable to you because I may not have enough. We may not have enough. I can't be hospitable to you because, well, there's only so much within the land can only provide for it. Where did my trust in God go? Do I not trust that God will provide for all of my needs? All my wants might not be provided for, but do I not trust that God will provide for my needs? I can be hospitable to the nth degree if I'm willing to trust that God will provide for me. I can be merciful to the nth degree if I trust that God will provide for all of my needs. I can forgive. I can be generous. I can be charitable. I can be compassionate to the nth degree if I trust that God will provide for my needs. Jackson here, it really goes back to the Indigenous way of life, that everything is made for the people. People have to understand that this is not the way to live or be honorable and neighborly to each other. Shows me his trust that the land will provide. It shows me that he trusts that there is enough to go around. The fact that he's willing to challenge and say, this isn't okay. That these people are coming here because they're in need. These people are coming here to escape hardship and trouble. The fact that he's willing to point out that these sweeping deportations, that these claiming that all these people are all criminals, to not just criminals in the sense that they're here illegal, but criminals to the extent that they deserve prison time for their crimes, that their crimes are indeed like high felonies. The fact that he's willing to challenge these mass deportations and say that they're not honorable, that they're not the loving thing to do, shows me that he trusts. Trust is a difficult thing to come by, especially when we've had governments, oligarchs, captains of industry, financiers of great wealth and profit. When all these people who have so much more than us continuously tell us that, oh, it's the migrant that's actually taking everything from you. You got to be afraid of the migrant. They're the ones that are going to take your job. They're the ones going to take your house. They're the ones going to empty your bank account. It's hard to trust when it's been those deceitful voices speaking into our ears the entirety of our existence. But Christians, we believe that God will provide. We believe that God will provide. So what should we do when a voice whispers, "There's not enough to go around"? What should we do when a voice whispers, "They're going to steal everything from you"? Do we trust that voice? Or do we trust God's promise? I say trust God's promise and ignore that voice. Amen.